Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Arena Digitals. I am going to show you a tutorial on how to use the my Friday Night Light overlays in Photoshop. I have opened my image that I want to use. It's already edited. This was my final that I did. I'm going to try to duplicate it. I just finished editing this one, but I'm going to redo it for the tutorial. So here's my base image. This is the overlay I'm going to be using. And then I used a couple of my fog overlays as well. Those are available in my shop too if you search that. I have this one open too because you can use all of them a little bit differently. I'm going to tweak this one a little bit to match my lighting, but that's the most important thing for these. Because my daughter, I lit her in the studio from the front and from the back left side. She is not lit from straight behind or from the right. So I'm going to be getting rid of these two lights when I work with this photo. This is one of my favorite ones in the collection, but I didn't light her all the way around. You would need to do something similar to that, or at least light them from both sides in the back if you're going to use this one. You should always shoot for which digital you want to use. I might redo this one with her just so I can use this one because I love it. So anyways, okay, I'm going to get started. I am going to go ahead and start with my base image. I'm going to go to my quick selection tool and select subject up at the top. And Photoshop is taking forever. Oh. Okay. Zoom in, and it didn't select all of the ball, so I want to go ahead and go in and select that. Doesn't have to be perfect, you can fix it later. But the bigger spots that aren't selected, I want to be sure to select. Okay, good enough for now. I'm going to duplicate my layer, create a layer mask, and then press Ctrl or Command I on my keyboard. I'm going to go over to my overlay, select all, edit, copy, edit, and paste over my image. I'm going to drag and resize it. I'm going to change the blending mode to screen. That way I can see my subject too. And now I want the light to be coming down similar on her. I'm going to press OK. Now I'm going to click between the layers here and press Alt on my keyboard and click when that arrow pops up, or you can just right click your overlay and create clipping mask. That will put it behind your subject. So I'm going to create a layer mask on my overlay. I'm going to go to my black brush at 100% opacity, and I'm going to do like 50% opacity at first. I'm going to brush off. Now you would have to do a little bit more shadowing and everything if you were leaving all of that here, but I'm not including that. So I am going to get rid of this and kind of feather it up. And then I also want to get rid of the light over here because it doesn't match my image. If it matches your image, you obviously don't have to get rid of it. I'm going to keep some of the fog because I'm going to be adding fog to my image anyways, so okay, and then I'm going to go back to my white brush and I'm going to brush some of it back in a little bit I didn't want to get rid of all of it. Lower my opacity to do that. Just brush on and off until you like how it looks. I'm gonna look at my other image. Okay. I was happy with that one, so okay. Now I'm going to add blur because I want it to seem like this is the backdrop, but she's standing way up here and the backdrop's way back there. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to add 9, but if you wanted to add more depth, you could. If you wanted to add less, you could. Just make sure that you add enough to where it's going to look realistic. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in. And don't be afraid to change these backdrops if you don't like how they look. I do not like how the lights have spots in them. So I'm literally just going to fill them in. And I also want this row down here to be more visible. So I'm going to do about 20% opacity. And I'm just going to use my clone tool to bring that down here to make it seem like they're double, just like the first one. %, again, I want to fill in. Oops. And this is just personal preference. Okay. Now, I want to zoom in again and go around the outline of her body. I'm going to select the layer mask that's on my subject. And I'm going to use my black and white brush at 100% opacity. And I'm going to go around and paint in areas that did not select. White to brush on the overlay, black to brush it off. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this because it can take a while sometimes. I'm just going to get the bigger areas. Black to brush it back off. Oops. Part of her pants was in the shadows, so a lot of the time that doesn't select very good. It's already brushed off of her feet, so I don't really have to look too much into that. But if you kept it on the feet, you would need to clean that up as well. I'm not going to go back and forth with that. I would clean that up a little bit more though. And then if you want, you can go around the outside and add blur to blend her a little bit more. I actually didn't do that for this image. I usually do, but as you can see, her hair looks pretty, everything else looks pretty good. So I am happy with this for now, but I want to make it a little bit darker down here and I want to add some more fog. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten my image. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to grab my burn tool on shadows. My exposure is about 39%. And I'm just going to paint it on down here. And then I'm going to lower the opacity just a little bit. I don't want it to be too dark because I don't want it to look like she's floating. Her shadow's there, but okay, flatten. And then I'm going to grab one of my fog overlays, select all, edit, copy, and paste. Going to get it how I want it, resized. Okay, and then change my blending mode to screen. Boom, looks so cool. Okay, and then you can create a layer mask on that. Black brush at about 20 to 30% opacity. Or you could just leave it like this, but I want to brush off some of the fog. And I actually like that. I was going to use my other one too to put more down at her feet. Like, this one looks different, but I kind of like this one, so I might even change it. And then maybe to blend a little bit better, I would go into Camera Raw. And add a little bit of contrast, add a little bit of clarity. I'm going to drag down my highlights just a tad. Okay. Zoom in, make sure I like everything. Okay, it looks good. And then I could use my sharpening action, but for the tutorial, I'm just gonna add a little bit of sharpness to her eyes, a little bit to her mouth. Done. And that looks cool. That will make a really neat, as you can see, I've brushed off the fog a lot more on this one. That's gonna make a really cool softball picture for her. Before and after. If I wanted to use something like this, and you can use the horizontal ones on vertical photos, it's just obviously going to crop some of it. Oop, I have to select her again. Shouldn't have done that. Okay, sorry guys, my Photoshop froze on me. I have to select her again. Hopefully it doesn't freeze on me again. Photoshop with all of their updates. Okay. I'm just gonna select the ball real quick. Okay. And then I'm gonna come over to this one, select all, oops. Copy, paste, put it behind her. Oops, I forgot my Control Command I. Okay. So with this one, I would keep my floor as is, and I would put this at about the point where I would be having a backdrop hung in the studio. As you can see, this is what I was talking about. It looks great from over here, but there's no light on the back of her head, and there's no light on the back side of this side, so this backdrop wouldn't make sense. You could still use it, but I personally wouldn't. So I would add a significant amount of blur to this for it to look as though it was a backdrop. You can play around with the different blending modes, like linear dodge. I don't even know if that even made a difference. Maybe. You could lower the opacity on it, and then you could create a layer mask. 25% is good, and then brush it off the bottom so it fades up. You could even add like twinkle lights down here. Brush it off in certain areas around her. So if the lighting matched, I think that would look super cool too. You can play around with how the depth of it, or how far you would want it to be back from where she's standing. And that's how I would use those ones. I don't recommend using them like an actual, like they're in the photo, just because these backdrops are digitally created and you're gonna need to add some blur for them to look realistic. Maybe if you put them like right here and blurred the backdrop, but they'd have to be like pretty small, the subject, because of the depth of the photos. So it might not look as good. You could add fog to this one too. And around the photo. So there's different ways to use them. And there's a bunch of like black and white, just the lights. There's some stadium ones. There's some for hockey, basketball. I think there's like 45 total I did. So I hope you have fun with them. If you have any questions, you can message me on Etsy. If you are a studio photographer and you would like to join my group on Facebook, I will link that in the description.